Not a teenager
not
yet.
even a teenager yet. But you were also a young man still struggling through life. And I've never told you this, but because we've also never had an opportunity to sit in the same couch when I'm interviewing you. That's odd. That in all my years of my career and your years of your career, I've never interviewed you.
You probably always looked at me through the lenses of the old bad Bobi wine, yeah?
But so there have been different points of your life and my life in my career where I have interacted with people who've talked about you, not knowing that I know you, and they've described you a certain way, and as the interview goes on, I'll give you bits and pieces of it.
Sure.
But I want you to take us at the beginning, anywhere, simanyi webutandikira naye londa wotandikira, and take us there, and let's start the story of Robert Kyagulanyi.
Some of my favorite early memories are the memories in Kamocha, when I was growing up with my mother, who was more or less a single mother. Not that she was separated from her husband, but because our father was in prison when we were.
All my years of my career and your years of your career, I've never interviewed you.
You probably always looked at.
I remember once somebody describing you, a mutual friend at the time, saying that, and I'm going to use this in Luganda because it doesn't make sense when you translate it. Akagaya kakozi kakoze buli kimu kasala enviiri kasiiga enjala kasena amazzi webale. And the person wasn't describing hearsay. They were describing parts of you they knew. That they've literally said amazzi bwegabula ku kyala ajja gasena. Like, you were the actual definition of a hustler at the time. Because today we say a hustler, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you were the real definition of a hustler.
Not just me, many young men and women of my generation were quite, tough hustlers when we were growing up. You see, the Kamocha of then, like you were mentioned, was a zoned Kamocha. I'll start from up. Where there's City Primary, later Area Primary School, there was a road dividing the up top.
Lohana, that area.
Government officials used to stay there in colonial days. It was the whites that used to stay there. Then after that road coming down to Kanjocha Street, that's where the Indians used to stay. And then after Kanjocha Street, there's that Kira Road. Up, it was the Indians. Then down, it was
even that route that has polyclinic or stage.
Exactly. Katia wabiranga wabayindi, but later on government officials. And then there's this old Kira Road. That's what divides you. On the upper side we have KCC flats, where people like the Julianas, the Baby Pools, Bella used to stay. And then after that, Chi Road, there's the down upper. The Dangalas. That's where the Tumusime Flavias grew up. That's where the Bobi was, the Toolmans, etc. So it was a zoned place. And those zones were not enforced by officers. But
no, it was community.
Yeah, it was community. And it was engraved in our minds. You belong here, you don't belong.
I was about to say, do you remember how the division was also in friendships? You had a circle that was from here. And this...
And if you went below your circle, your parents would be so mad at you. So,
because you didn't belong.
Exactly.
I want to, because you're 10 children, but also I wanted to know, you said dad was in jail and your dad has or had a political or leadership, let me call it leadership.
Involvement.
Yes. I wanted to know, so you were born in Gomba.
I was born in Kozi Hospital.
In Kozi Hospital. And then, so Gomba is what you're calling home.
Yes.
Yes. When do you come to Kamocha? When does mom put a footing in Kamocha?
For clarity, we're not only 10. Just 10 children by my mother.
Okay.
Yeah. My father had 34 children, from different mothers, typical African man. And my grandfather was one of the founding members of the Democratic Party. And in 1980, after the rigged election, my grandfather and my father and some of our elder brothers joined General Museveni in that Bush war. Of course, now that caused so much problem, including our family losing everything they had. My grandfather passed away in that war. I was born in that war. So, you know, I'm a war child. But growing up, I was only growing up to stories. Because being born in 82, by the time we come to 86, I'm just growing up out of the ruins. So it's only stories and pictures that I see of our family's glorious past, but born in the ghetto. So it is just that glorious past that was always used by my mother to tell us that where we are in the ghetto is not who we are. We were once greater people than we had been reduced to. And I spent all my life trying to get back to the rightful place
what you were.
that my mother told me I belonged to.
Everyone who was born in that era of war or transition from war to whatever, there are stories that are being told, especially if you had family that was involved. Did you grow up around that, where you saw what the family stood for?
Yes.
And it was clear?
Yeah, it was very, very clear. It was very clear. It was taught to all of us. Of course, now, I grew up in a family where my father was so staunch on that. My father made sure we learned that we are Catholics. We learned that we are Baganda. But most importantly, we learned that we are DP members. That's what my father tried so much to teach us. But my mother always taught us that we are in the mess that we ended up in because of politics. And she always taught us that the only thing that can pull us up from our ruins was the work of our hands. And I worked so hard, and I listened to my mother like most boys do.
Like hard work.
And it worked. And I succeeded. Musically, I became a star, fairly successful and all that, until the ghost of my father showed up in me again.
and the politics took over the hard work.
Exactly.
What was it like growing up? I mean, I get the time that, you know, you and I met growing up, but you were already sort of a young adult. I want to know about younger Bobi Wine. I can hear you saying there were dreams. What was the thing you were looking at? As a young boy, what did you enjoy? What kind of, you know, childhood did you actually have?
I had a rather interesting childhood. I didn't play sports. I was fairly physically weak growing up, but I was very intelligent. Only excelled in things like debate and performing arts. Like I said, I was born in Kozi Hospital, but that was during the wartime. So we never lived in one place for more than 6 months. So we were in Kozi, then we went to Chotera, and then after the end of the war, we came back to Kamocha to live with my mother, because even after the war ended, my father was still a political prisoner, and he stayed in prison up to 1988 when he was released. So late 88 when he was released, he came for us from Kamocha in 89 to reunite all of us back in Gomba. I lived in Gomba for a few years, but because for the time when my father was away, my mother had established herself in Kamocha, where her father was born, because my grandfather, my mother's father, is a renowned gentleman called Mordecai Chiinji. So we came back to Kamocha to live with our mother. Was
that your choice at that point? Are you an adult making that choice for yourself, or daddy saying it's okay?
I never made any choices in my life. I always went by the parents. Yeah. I was a troublesome child.
That's honest.
You know, very troublesome. I believe that I wouldn't have turned out the way I am if it was not my mother. My mother beat the hell out of me. I have so many scars from my mother.
She had to.
I had elder brothers, the likes of Eddie Awe, Nyanzi.
In the line of the 10 from your mother, your number what?
Chairman Nyanzi comes first, then Eddie Awe comes second, then I have a sister called Namlene, she's third, then we have a brother who's a pastor called Pastor Sentamo, he's fourth, then my brother Julius, fifth, and then I come number six. Then I'm followed by Banjo Man, Manager John, Mickey Wine, and that's why it's the last born.
Okay. That's not a bad number, but
it's not a hard number.
Also,
but we also have a special sister.
Yes, the only girl in the boys. I mean, I understand. Mom, you said mom was in medicine.
Mom was a midwife.
A midwife. If in hindsight, now when you look back at the years, how did she do it? Raising all those boys.
Man, I don't know, because she would work either the night shift in Mulago and day shift she was running a clinic in Kamocha. And when she worked daytime in Mulago, she would
be on the clinic at night.
But one thing that I remember is that we would feed on hospital food. Since my mother was working at Mulago, she would have a tiffin. Tiffin Ojimaji?
Yes, container.
So we would go with an empty tiffin as if we are taking food for some Mulwade. But then she would put food for us.
To feed how many?
To feed us. We needed food. So whatever the medics would eat, we would carry home as well and eat.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it was good food. Don't say wow. It was good food.
It's not just a match. It's the crescendo.
There was a small plot of land. The most enterprising my mother I've ever seen. Our mother, I think I was much younger when she bought that plot in Kamocha, where I now doing studio and Firebase sits. But I grew up.
What was it before? It was just a home?
No, there was a garage there.
Okay.
There was a garage and there was a small plot of land. But after my mother bought it, my elder brothers, Ediawe and Nyanzi, helped her put up a shack.
Okay.
You know, our house was a mud house initially with a tin roof. And it was built by my elder brothers, Nyanzi and Ediawe, together with my mother. So we went transforming that over the years. Actually, in the house, on our house in Kamocha, there is still a part that we just decided to preserve. That part is tin roofed and it is mud and water. And we maintained it like
to remind you.
To remind us of where we come from.
Wow. So you literally saw her do from scratch to where you ended up.
Yes.
That teaches you something, doesn't it?
A lot. It taught us a lot, continues to teach us.
But then, now when I think about the dynamics of being in a marriage and having children, it's assumed that you learn hard work from a father. Assumed. But you were having these lessons of being a go-getter, of trying and doing and never giving up from a woman.
Flavia, not that our father is not hardworking.
Yes.
He was very hardworking. In fact, even very daring. That's what landed him in trouble. But for me, the example that I saw, I'm told about my father's greatness by my elder siblings.
But it wasn't because of proximity.
Exactly. But for me, what I saw, everything that I saw on my mother.
I wonder what your first song choice will be.
One Love from Bob Marley.
I wouldn't be surprised that you would have a Bob Marley song.
Why? It was also Mama's Child, right?
So really, the influences are, I'm sure, quite similar till the end.
But I believe in love. I believe love is a solution to most of the problems in the world.
It is. But it's also the hardest thing to have or give.
Well, few things are so hard, as hard as it.
And my guest today is Robert Chagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, and I'm not sure what title you prefer to go by these days, since you have very many.
My favorite title is Bro.
Bro.
Yeah.
See? So we were at your first story where mom has influenced you, you've grown up. Let's talk about school.
Yeah.
What was the school times like?
Do we have enough time on this show to talk about?
Let me guess.
Yeah. First, I started my first school at a school called St. Maria Goretti Kindergarten and Nursery School. It was in Kamocha, in Acholi Quarter, now Chifumbira. It's that school where I studied with the renowned TikTok sensation Asia, who we lost.
So that's how you
recently. Yeah. It was owned by a lady. She's still there. She's called Mchala Chimboa. Now the school moved to Kamocha Mulimira Zone. I was there for my nursery, and then for my P1, I went to City Primary School, now Area Primary School. For my P2, I went to Kamocha Islamic Primary School. For my P3...
Come on now.
Yeah, for my P3...
P1 in one school, P2.
Yeah. And for my P3, that's when my father came for us.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and
to go back to Gomba.
So my P3, I went to Kasaka Primary School. In fact, when we reached Gomba, I first went to Kanoni Meya Primary School for just a term. And then they elevated me to a school that had a better standard. That's Kasaka Primary School. P3 still. For my P4, I went to Kanoni Church School. That was a Catholic school. And that's where I did my P5 as well. So that's the longest period.
2 years.
Yeah, in a primary school. For my P6, I went to St. Aloysius Bokalaji Primary School. And I was in P6 when I sat for my P7.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long story.
Okay. I'm like, should we ask?
Yeah. So
why the movement? Each class?
The stability was not there as yet. In Uganda, there are children that they call Omwana Okumugugu. I was a sickly child that I needed to be with my mother. So whenever my mother had a transfer, she would carry me. But that was not the only reason. Most times, by the end of the year, I had performed exceptionally good, but I did not have school fees for the next year. So it is only my report that would take me to the next place, only to leave Gasasude fees. So when I went to senior one, for my senior one, I went to St. Maria Goretti Secondary School in Katende. That was senior one, first term. Senior one, second term, I went to Brain Trust Academy. And yes, that's the longest secondary school that I was in. That's the secondary school I spent the longest time, because I was there for senior 1, senior 2, and senior 3. For senior 4, I went to Kitante in school, and that's where I met everybody that I made. Turman, Master Paroti, Jerry Shaka, the late, Rude Boy Devo, Baby Cole.
It was such a transitional school for all of us.
Yeah, that's when I started actually singing. I did my senior 4 in Kitante in 96, and I went for my senior 5. I went to Rubiri Secondary School. Senior 6, I went to Kololo Secondary School. That's where I did my senior 6 from. I went to Makerere University. First did social sciences, but I opted out of it and did MDD.
The years that you're saying, when did Robert Chagulanyi start to say,
I was still talking about school. We were there.
Olimba.
Nchagatambula sinamara.
Tugende. Social sciences, you opted out MDD.
I went opted for MDD because there
you had already actually established yourself in music at that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I was not established as well. It was at the Department of Music, Dance and Drama that I...
Kagoma was not when you were at university?
I was at university doing MDD.
Right.
Yeah. So after that MDD, of course, I went out to the world and spent some more than 15 years in the field. It was in 2016 that I went back to school and I went to law school.
To law school, yes.
I went to East Africa International University, but I was there just for a year and I changed university to Cavendish because by then the law degree was not accredited.
The other side.
Yeah. Just completed this year my law degree, but still I also went to do a master's in human rights at the University of London. So that's what I'm doing. In between there, I also went to Harvard, for a brief course. So
the school journey is not short.
Yeah, it's not short. It continues. But the biggest school is the street.
Of course. Yeah. It's where you learn everything you're using. When did you start to say, to contribute to life? I
did not say that. I was pushed to that.
Okay, life made you.
When we were in P2,
you're quite young.
With my elder brother, Julius, because he was more farmer.
Right.
He would carry a basket, would carry my mother's either sumbusa or kabalagala or fried cassava. So during break time.
At school?
Yeah.
At the school you were going to?
Oh, yeah. Wow. During break time, my elder brother would run business and I would run with him. I would later learn because that was the family business. When you're home, mutambuza kabalagala. My mother was doing various kinds of businesses. Lunaku wakatale, akos endibota. Endibota is old clothes or old shoes.
A bale of clothes. Yeah.
Actually, as time went on, my mother also ventured in video showing Ebibanda. Yeah. So we would be running those, our mother's small business.
So she would start the idea and the business, and then because, you're many boys around, you'd get a kabalagala, kuchibanda.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that helped us a great deal. And of course, as our elder brothers also, took us under their wings, particularly Chairman Nyanzi, who was owning hardware and I was running it.
Right.
So those skills helped us a great deal growing up.
But did you end up enjoying the journey along the way? Because mukola kasente,
honestly, I didn't enjoy it in the beginning.
Okay.
But I just had to accept it. It was nice to earn, it was nice to work, but I was not doing what I was enjoying. I only enjoyed business when I got into the music business because that was fun, that was passion, So that's when
it wasn't just survival.
No, it wasn't just survival. It was enjoying
what you were doing.
I felt it.
Your brothers, I think your two elder brothers, just one had got into music, some sort of music, because that's when the studio ended up being built.
Yeah.
Tell us that journey, because there's an assumption that your brother just set up a studio and you said, okay, I'll just make music. Actually,
no. Even when I was much, much younger, I grew up to a musical family. When my father picked me from Kamocha, together with my brother Julius, to take us and reunite us with a bigger family. When sanity had been established. I found so many of my siblings that I also didn't even know because I'm coming from this mother and there were many mothers. So in that big house in Gomba, there was a family choir of my elders. Oh my God, I have my sisters that sing. So it was so beautiful when I went to that family. Eddie Awe was just one of the many singers.
Or the one who got more pronounced.
Yes.
Well, I take it for granted. Because I'm an only child, I've never understood how people are many in one home and enjoy that. How was that? I guess you guys are 10, but then now you're reunited and you're more than 10.
Yeah, we were in a house, maybe about 28 children. Thereabout. It was beautiful. Of course, there was a fight every day. Of course, at the end of every day, our father had his sticks in the corner. So he had to come. He was a strict disciplinarian.
Right.
So he had to come and punish the offenders of the day and also reward the good children.
There was offenders of the day.
Of course. Every evening, 7 p.m. or so, there was a report. So and so.
And I wonder who was doing the report.
So and so stole mango. So and so was reported. So many were giving reports, including myself.
You were giving reports, or you were on the offender? You were number one on the offenders list.
I was one of the offenders, but because I was young, it was usually hard
to be beaten.
To be beaten. But as I grew up, I lost that immunity. Anyway, so in that family, there was a choir, and that family choir would usually be hired to sing on funerals, to sing on parties, to sing on weddings.
And these are your siblings?
Yes, these are my siblings. But these used to sing only Christian hymns.
Yes.
So while the talent was there, for me when I was growing up, it was a different perception altogether. It was Michael Jackson, it was Shabba Ranks, it was Buju Banton. So for me, I got what many people would call spoiled.
Because your choices were far from church.
Exactly. And it turned out to be a complete different story from all my
Why do you think so? Do you think it was the influence of the other youths that you were with in Kamwacha? Where do you think that streak came from? Because if I'm to be honest, remember that generation where we grew up, I mean, even Bebe Cool and everybody who was in that area, everyone had dreadlocks. Well, the guys, everybody had dreadlocks. Everybody looked a certain way, dressed a certain way. What looked to the world as Abana Bayaye, in that community was normal. Everybody wore their trousers down. Everybody was in vests. Everybody was in vests.
Everybody was in a vest. Everybody was walking in a certain way as if they are on springs. You know,
it was normal in that community. Do you think that's what influenced you? Because you were around people who were doing certain things?
Yes, the influence largely came from the Jamaicans. The Jamaicans were facing same conditions as poverty, deprivation, a dilapidation in the infrastructure, etc. But they were making it look cool. Buju or Shaba is in the ghetto, but there's this vibe in the ghetto. They are refusing to pity themselves because of their circumstances. That gave us energy. We started celebrating the ghetto. That's why we started feeling, even proudly referring to ourselves as the ghetto. We proudly refer to the ghetto as our home. That's how people
Because there's a picture of another ghetto elsewhere in the world that looked cool.
So it was cool to belong to the ghetto. And we gave it a new face to the extent that even those guys that came from what one would call well-to-do families started wishing
they were part of the ghetto.
They were part of the ghetto. And some of us that, had some lugezigezi who go to school to elevate and dare to step beyond our confines, got taken so serious to the extent that they started calling me the ghetto president. Because I was in the ghetto, president.
But wasn't that though something that your fellow people would take negatively? Because why were you accepted? Why was do you get what I'm trying to say?
I completely get
you looked at in your community as Goracho was a guasing.
That's very true. In most cases, in deprived communities, especially ghetto communities, when you show signs of wanting to elevate yourself beyond the surroundings, they tend to detest you. And it's true that in the ghetto, even when you wear specs, they define you as Rugezigezi. When you speak English, they define you as Rugezigezi. But I also had understood the code that you just have to win and win and win. In the ghetto, especially in the boys' world, it's defined so much by violence. The more you can fight, is the more respect that you can get. So I was a boxer, and after speaking this English of Rugezigezi, I would prove to whoever challenged me that I could beat the hell out of them. So that alone gave me acceptance. We had to be accepted by force.
By force.
Yeah.
It's taking the power, not waiting for it.
It's taking it. Yeah.
Even the times when your mom was alive, I'm sure you had inklings of this life. Wasn't she worried?
Interestingly, when my mother was alive, I was a little bit much more grounded. I'd never tasted alcohol when my mother was alive. I never tasted a cigarette or a joint of weed. Besides escaping from home and going to watch films in these ghetto video halls, I'd never spent a night out in a disco. But when my mom passed away, it affected me a great deal. It almost made me lose my way because, you know, I lived my life so much for my mother. You know, even going to school, I struggled so much to perform better because that's the only thing that made my mother happy. And after bringing a good report card to my mother, it didn't matter what they talked about me.
She was happy.
Yeah. So when my mother passed away, in many ways I lost my moral compass. That's when I started drinking. That's when I started smoking. Anything that passed me, I got so violent and all that. I only, thank God, regained my moral compass if I did. Much later on. You know, yeah.
That's honest. What about the big brothers? Because normally the reins almost fall to the next adult.
Yes.
And in this case, you had Nyanzi.
Yeah.
And actually, with your number 6, technically, you had all the
we had
others.
all these others, but those that took charge most were Nyanzi and Yahweh. And after the passing of our mother, we, in many ways, got scattered. Each one of us started looking for a way out.
Right.
Yahweh succeeded in leaving the country and he went to America. Now we only had Nyanzi, but he was also growing. That later he even got a family.
Yeah.
And we were growing because I was 15 going to 16 when my mother passed away, and those are very, very important
Formative
years for a young man. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I was lost until I met Bobi.
When you say lost, Bobi, I want you to actually give us the real picture. Because are you then living with Nyanzi? Are you then in the streets figuring out A, B, C, D?
I started living by myself.
Wow.
Yeah. The only thing that I didn't lose, that was the interest in education.
Okay.
My mother had made me promise, just a short period before she passed away, that regardless of the interest in music, which was largely regarded as a spoiler, once you go into music, especially raga, you are wasted. So my mother had made me promise her that I'll never abandon education. So whatever came my way,
You had to go to school.
I continued going to school. Thanks to my elder brother Nyanzi, he was paying my school fees. So yeah, I continued. I completed my senior 6. You know, of course I didn't perform as well as I would have loved to perform, but it was a question of, you know, making sure that I graduate and my mother will not haunt me.
We take it for granted when you hear ghetto president, money guy, you are ghetto, you know, and it looks nice. But you were a 15, 16-year-old who had to figure life out for himself after the death of his mother. Even if the ghetto became home, what changes in your life? When you look back and you can see a 15-year-old now in the ghetto, what can you tell us about their life that we will take for granted, thinking they're okay, judging them and not knowing?
I'll tell you that all those children, boys and girls, shouldn't be judged. They're not where they are, or they don't end up where they are because they want. For example, Flavia, looking at you now and remembering the young girl that was coming from down in the swamp there, going to school, I wonder how you did not end up as a karaoke dancer.
True.
I wonder.
Because it's around you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the norm. You know, just like I also make people wonder how I did not end up in prison or die so early or something.
Even the fights that used to happen, how people don't die and, you know, you end up on the wrong end.
Me, it's the power of God that I did not die in my 20s because I was fairly violent. And even when I succeeded musically, it was like I was trying to revenge on my old life. And that happens to so many ghetto youth when they
It's like you're looking in a mirror and you're fighting the other person.
Exactly. You don't want to be identified with what you wear. That's why you have to buy very many gold chains to prove a point to your own self. That's why you need a huge car or mini cars more than you can even drive. So that was with me. I credit education a great deal because it opened my mind. I loved to read.
Okay.
And there's this one autobiography that I read, the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I saw myself. I saw this guy that had never even gone to school like I had, but he's going to prison, transformed him. He was in prison for 10 years, and that made him discover that he had many, many more
gifts in him.
He only needed to pick one and magnify it. Now, I had not gone to prison yet. So for me, it was an opportunity to learn from the lives of other people. And even the guys that we were growing up with. For example, there's this one guy called Biekwaso. I even sang about
Yes.
This guy was in Gomba, was a friend to Fide Rutaya, and he would speak to kids, that would gather around to see Fide whenever he came to our village. And this guy spoke so much sense to us, and I picked so much from him. Of course, there are also great guys that come from the ghetto. Godfrey Nyakana, he used to live there in Chebando. He became an international boxer, and he would come because we respected him so much. He would come, he would personally sit me down as one of the boys around, and he would speak sense to me. So the sense that I would pick from various people, unexpected people, shaped me
Built you.
a great deal to make me realize that, wait, this life is still long and I can, change it into anything that I want.
What's your second song choice?
Believe by Dax Vibes.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is not just you supporting your brother. It's a good song that you like.
It's Believe. I wasn't Dax Vibes fan because up to now I can't believe it's that boy singing that amazing stuff. But just the song itself and the word Believe.
It is good. Yeah.
And it was, I must tell you today that you were very inspiring.
Yeah.
This young girl from the ghetto, speaking this clean English, you know.
That always was a problem.
Where do you get the confidence? It took me so much work to get the confidence to speak to people, especially in this foreign language, English. But this young girl from the ghetto, she's on national TV.
Yeah.
You inspire a great deal. Not inspired, but you continue to inspire.
Thank you.
Sure.
What I remember is that there was so much happening in that ghetto. You were right about violence.
Yeah.
You would see people your age either dying or their lives greatly being affected because of, you know, the type of life you're living in. And if you're not smart enough to be exposed, you can think, this is the future, this is it.
Yeah.
But you and a couple of other people were able to see that there's a life beyond that. You held on to music.
Yeah.
I get that the family had music and love, and now you were influenced by reggae and raga. But there's that thing of telling yourself, Nangi and Sobolo Chikola. What made you believe that you could do it yourself?
Initially, actually, music was the outstanding thing that I could do to stand out.
Right.
As young boys, when they're growing, some go into sports, not as a passion, but to stand out.
Yeah.
You know, now I was not a sportsman, and having moved from Gomba, I came to Kampala, schools like Brendas and Kitante. I was not the smartest that there was, and I didn't have so much confidence to even speak out or debate. So it was music that would make me stand out.
Give you a voice.
That would give me a voice. And every Friday there was an entertainment session at school. That's why and I would see guys rapping. And I see never a guy in Basobolabano. So I also tried it out, and it worked. And that's when I got in touch with my close friend, then Master Parrot. And we made a duo. And the rest is history. But most importantly, I did that music because I wanted a voice and to represent not just myself, but those that are like me.
Why did you think that you would be the one to represent people like you?
No, first I wanted to represent myself. Myself. Then
prove to yourself you can do it.
Yes. And then also represent those that are like me. There are many of my friends, of my contemporaries, that could not, let alone sing, but could not even speak for themselves. And in many ways I would see their approval of everything I said as if it's coming from their own mouths.
Do you think that later on when you looked at your fan base, most of them were following you because it was a mirror of what they could be?
Yes, many of them.
The possibility.
Yes.
Of Msobolo Mugeto and I become so and so.
Many of my fans.
You wanted to stand out, but later I'm sure you realized even when you were starting that music is a business. You don't just sing for the sake of singing.
Interestingly, Flavia, for us, and I believe most of my generation did not go into music for the money. For example, me, by the time I started singing, I was making my money. Me, by the time I was in senior 4, I would have my 2-3 tonnes of bricks. I had my business. You remember that kiosk where we used to sell tapes? You know, it was mine. I was making my small
cash on the side,
cash on the side. However, music was a passion.
Yes.
Besides the voice and representing other people, it made us stand out.
Right.
So it was cool. It was passion, purely passion. Of course, along the way, we started realizing, wait, this passion can actually bring in some money.
Yes.
You know, we started by having to pay to be allowed on stage. And I hope my kids don't get to listen to this part.
Yeah.
But whenever you go to a dance there, you cannot be seen by the girls. Unless if you step up there and give them a song or two, and then after you position, you quit and say, hey, guys, did you see? I'm the one who was at stage. Who was on stage.
You have to not be accessible, such as you remain a star.
You have to try to be accessible, because sometimes even when you wanted to be accessible, nobody ever wanted to access you. So,
so everybody thinks Kagoma was your first song. It wasn't your first studio song.
No, it wasn't.
It was your first hit song.
It was my first hit song, but not my first studio song.
Yeah.
I did my first studio song, I think, when I was 13 years, 13 or 14.
And Dream Studios was already there?
No, it wasn't there. We recorded it in Namalondo Theatre. I was rapping, and there's this gentleman called Papa Ronnie Ndaula. So he cited me. He was friends with my elder brother, Eddie Awe, who was already
in music.
But he was not rapping. So I was doing my raga, and Ronnie saw me. And they were doing a song for Justin Giuco, the boxer, who was going to fight some, I think, Italian boxer.
Right.
So they took me to feature in that song. But eventually they deleted my voice because it was so young. But I did a couple of other songs.
Yeah.
We did a full album called Namoleme, but it never came out. So yeah, I had been singing for about 6 years.
Imagine.
By the time I did Kagoma.
Why did Kagoma stand out? Did you push it more?
No, I did not push Kagoma. So after singing with Master Parrot for some years, maybe 5, since Kitante days, there reached a time where he realized that our career had no hope. So he decently asked me.
What does that mean?
Because things were not working out. We had been singing, and then boom, Red Bandon comes, is a star. We sing. Boom, Menton Kruno and Mega D comes, they are stars. We sing, then Chameleon, then Baby Call said, Then Master Parrot reached out to me and said, you know what, bro?
Chigani.
And we need to divide this bad luck so that it does not affect
because
us.
You can't have two of bad luck
exactly.
together. Yeah.
And he probably was right.
Oh, dear.
Because 6 months later, I did Kagoma. And I did Kagoma, not expecting a hit song. But I wanted to do a song that is so lyrically powerful that if anybody ever gave me an opportunity to step on stage, they would never forget the lyrics that of the song. They would never forget the vibe of the song. That's the mind I had when I was doing Kagoma. It was the first song I did alone by myself.
Okay.
All the songs that I'd been doing were Bobi Wine and Master Parrot. We had about 13 songs, but none of them was making sense.
Right.
So when he terminated that collaboration, that duo, I went in search of myself. And when I searched for myself, I found Kagoma.
I remember later WBS had a show. Kazora had Jam Agenda. He had actually just, I think, for 6 to 8 months taken over Jam Agenda from Collins and Nana. And they had a show at Africana. So all of us were there and we were bringing new talents to help them, you know. You come, you sing, because you sing on TV and you go. And of course, you remember music back in the day, Struck, I think, can attest to that. Musicians used to be in a line. Everybody was fighting for mic time.
For a microphone. Like I said, some pay to be
exactly. You understand what that? I mean, just to get a chance on a microphone. And I remember you were there. And because for me, up until at that point, I only knew you as the guy in the ghetto. I didn't really know you were the
guy that your parents warned you about.
So here you are, in your vest and trousers, and you're waiting for mic time. And I said, what can he possibly sing?
Yeah.
But I think what had happened, and they told us later, is that you had Watambuza, I think that's the right way to say it, Kagoma, in your own people.
Yeah.
That he underestimated you.
Yeah.
And he gave a chance to everyone. And I think midway the break, he gave you a microphone. And I was there. I'll never forget it. And I think the beat dropped. Kagoma, everybody went crazy. Your fellow artists, the unknown artists. It was only us, the presenters, that
didn't understand
that had no clue what the song was, who this guy had become. Of course, even I had not known the musical side of you. Remember, I just knew you from our, we're from home, and Kazora immediately said, "Who is this?" The interview started, everybody, because now there was intrigue of how come people know this person, but they don't really know who you were. Was that deliberate, or you just said, Bebantu Bange, let the music go to them? Did you know that the music had infiltrated the bottom, the people, before coming up to TV?
Actually, Flavia, by the time my name went up there in the mainstream media, I was already deep in the ghetto. You see, in the ghetto then, and I believe even now, there are those small performances in tiny
groups, events,
bars,
communities,
events, etc. And that's the audience I would perform to. I would perform to as few as 4 or 5 people.
What?
Wherever I got the opportunity. I made sure I performed to them. Even before Bobi knew that I was an artist, when I was still vibing her, we took a walk from the National Theatre. We passed by Barton Street. And the taxi guys were like, oh, Bobi, Stolechi. And Bobi was...
That was your audience.
Those were my audience.
Yeah,
so the mainstream people didn't know me. So by the time I got opportunity to step on those stages, the ghetto people that were in the audience already knew me.
What changed life? Because someone can say they saw you that day and they woke up one day and it was the top 3 artists. And you are one of the top 3. But there's no way it was just a snap of a finger.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that at all.
What was the journey like?
I got known for various things initially, not even just the music, because I was in business, leave alone these small businesses outside nightclubs. There's a chapati stall and it's mine. But nobody knows
that
apart
yours.
From the person
running it,
you know. And I had a community there that I was connecting with. I was into boxing, although I didn't go far with it, but I had that boxing community that every gym knew me to the extent that back in the day, I was among the first people that had what the young men or women call today a gari. I was the first to have a gang, although my gang was small, but we were a huge team of boxers that would meet, go partying, go to Heritage or Botanical, those end of year or holiday makers bashes, would go there together. It's various things that made me known.
So that means at that point, if I had asked one group of people about Bobi Wine, they knew the boxer. Another group knew the business guy with small business. Another group knew a musician. So when people said they knew Bobi Wine, it was for different things.
Yeah, and some didn't call me Bobi Wine then. Some just called me Bobo. Others called me Jaja Bobo.
Depending on which life they knew.
Exactly. Others were just calling me Chibanda back then. It's the music that stamped down the Bobi Wine name. And
how did you then decide to merge everything into the Bobi Wine of music? Or did that just
I didn't decide it. It just defined itself naturally as time went by.
Help me understand what beef contributed, because there was a couple of years where even to be defined as top 3 artists, it's almost like the 3 of you fought your way to those positions. And both in physical fighting and in musical fighting.
True. By the way, I never really wanted that beef.
The physical fights?
The physical fights, because they were unfair.
How?
Not to me,
but
to the people that were fighting with me. They were really unfair, because none of them even ever put a scratch on me, all through the years. I got into music. Chameleon had risen.
Because of the 3 of you, he had gone first.
He went first. Then Baby Cool. And these guys, they were my elders in age, and I was an underdog. Of course, Baby Cool comes from Kamocha. We're only separated by the road, by that road that divides classes. It comes from the upper class, and I come from the ghetto. And that was the kind of relationship that we always had. You know, according to him, we were the underdogs, the ghetto people, which, you know, is all right. However, when we got into music, now the element of boyish competition came up. You know, Chameleon was a star already and was enjoying it. And then Baby Cool was. And then before long, boom, there was this ragtag. There was this ghetto child. So that competition started.
From who though?
The beef started on the day when Chameleon drove a car. He had a convertible car written on Dorothea.
Yes.
So
like a red Kk.
Yes, the first gig that I got to perform on a promotion. So they got me in the ghetto and I was killing it on stage. And then Chameleon drove into the crowd while I'm on stage, into my crowd. Of course, you had a hit song then. Anybody, even if you are Michael Jackson and Justin Bieber drives a car into your audience when you are at the peak of your performance, you know, it distracts. I did not take it in
So when he drove in, the people's attention
temporarily
turned to him. Because, as you were saying, he was a star. And
Exactly.
Was it deliberate? Do you think he did it deliberately?
Most definitely.
Okay.
And later on, he apologized for it.
For that particular incident.
But immediately after apologizing, he said, but you know, I'm a star and I had to teach you how stars behave.
Right.
So the apology was bastardized immediately.
Yeah.
And I cast back, then he started a fight, and I ended it. Like I said, those are not things I'm very proud of.
Right.
Because, first of all, those fights were unfair, because it was always me beating them, not the other way around. And I didn't like that, but, you know, it shaped us, and I hope the artists of today can get the positive lessons out of them, not the negative lessons. That beef also, in a way,
elevated the music.
Elevated the music, because now the downtrodden, all the underdogs, all the ghetto people had gotten a champion of themselves, and they had the right to speak back to anybody and tell them, Toinacho Tugamba, we don't care how rich your parents are, we don't care. We have a ghetto gladiator that will
standing for us,
speak back to you, and if necessary, beat the hell out of you. So it went on like that. Of course, it turned even musical. As we grew up and matured, at least on my side, we decided to channel it to a more productive way.
You were mentioning the start of the beef, and that start of the beef only has two people. It has you and Chameleon.
Yeah.
When does the third person enter this group?
Now, initially, because these guys had their own stories in Nairobi.
That's Baby Cool and Chameleon.
They had their own stories in Nairobi and everything. So when I had that fight with Chameleon, immediately Baby Cool called me and
because you became an ally.
Exactly.
We have one common
an enemy
of your enemy
is your friend. So he called me immediately and said, man, so this guy messes with you. I said, yeah. We were not friends with Baby Cool.
Up until that point?
Yeah, up until that point. So he reached out and said, man, I said, oh, now it's Omagala. Cool. So very quickly he joined Firebase, where I was with Toolman and Black Boy.
What do you mean joined?
Joined our crew. We had, when I did Kagoma and became a household name, the only way I could have my homies ride along with me and also tap into that success was to have a crew.
Right.
That way, everywhere I went, I didn't go only as Bobi Wine, but I went as Bobi Wine and his crew.
Right.
So it was an opportunity to recognize Butcherman, to recognize Black Boy, to recognize...
and were you giving them chance on stage as well?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's how they all got known.
What do you mean Baby Cool joined? I don't know this part of the story.
Oh! No, you don't read his story?
No, clearly.
Yeah.
And I know the both of you, so I'm confused.
Yeah.
Because when you say joined, maybe it wasn't for long.
No, he was actually, when he joined me and joined the Firebase crew, you know, we had done an anthem much earlier with other colleagues. But when he joined, he brought in more energy, his vibe. And we did a song with him called Funtula.
Simia was under the assumption it was just a partnership for that moment.
Yeah, initially it was a partnership, but as the friendship grew, you know, he was honestly bringing something, adding something.
And thank you for being honest.
Yeah, he was adding something. He was a good artist, and you know, a crew that
he didn't have a crew at the time, did he?
No, he did not have a crew at that time. So for a crew that had only Bobi Wine, Toolman, and Black Boy,
now had Baby Cool.
Now had him, and it was adding, but he was also benefiting because now he was getting security. Now, Chameleon's guys could no longer round him up and beat
because you were there.
No, I was there, and for the time, for all the years that he was my friend, nobody touched him until we parted ways.
I'll come back to that. I need to take you back to a story that I got to witness because I was in the proximity of the ghetto, but I never truly understood the base of the story. The late weatherman.
The late weatherman. Now, I think around 2003 or 4, I met these young boys, Weatherman and Jajanana. Now, they came to me. Many people were coming to me to join Firebase, and we were accepting them, you know. So everybody came in a different way. Now, Weatherman came with Nana. They had actually gone to Nairobi and recorded 2 songs. So they approached me and said, Father, back then they were calling me grandfather.
Right.
They said, grandfather, we have our music here, but we are requesting to be accepted into the Firebase crew.
Right.
The benefits of being in the Firebase crew was just sharing stage.
To be promoted, to push your music. So their song was already recorded.
Them. Yeah. They were amazingly talented, especially Weatherman, to the extent that I even did a song with Weatherman called Mekume. That was a song encouraging young people to use condoms because HIV/AIDS
had been rampant
at the time. So, Weatherman joined us. It's very unfortunate that at the height of our success, when we had just
I think he had just started.
He started off at a very high peak because he was very talented. That one song that we did made him recognized so much. And we were going to perform that song for the first time in Club Silk.
For the first time?
Yes. Now, Weatherman was living in Makindye, and I was living in Kamocha. Yeah. So he was supposed to come to Kamocha and go to Club Silk and perform. Right. Now, because he delayed, me and the crew jumped into my car and went to Club Silk. Where he reached Kamocha when we had already left. So he said, let me jump on a border and come to Club Silk. Jumped on a border, passed by Acacia Mall.
Where Acacia Mall is today, but it wasn't there then.
Exactly, Just after Lohana, there, in that junction near the Chinese embassy. The then Dean of Students, Ekudu, was riding in a car that came and hit Weatherman. Weatherman died. So I was in club when my big brother Eddie Awe called me and said, "Gwe, I've just gotten a call and told me that one of your people has been knocked down and killed."
And this is in the night?
That was in the night. So myself and Ragadi and Chameleon and many other artists, in fact including Baby Cool, by then the animosity had gone down. We rushed to the scene. So Chameleon and others got there and Ragadi got there before me. Landed on Ekudu and beat the hell out of him. So when I landed,
was in the car which had just knocked border. And now, at this point, Weatherman has died on the spot.
Yeah. So me, when I reached there, I recognized Ekudu. Now for me, Ekudu, I was just new from Makerere. And Ekudu had been my dean. So I knew him to the extent that we actually were praying together in the same church. Pastor Martin Semper's church. We were born again Christians then. So it was insane. My fellow artist and singing partner is there lying dead. The culprit is my dean of students
at the university.
Long story short.
And they've already beaten him.
Yeah, long story short, we were all rounded up, thrown in prison. Thank God the cases were later dropped and we were freed. But Weatherman continues to lay dead.
I thought that was a beginning of a wave, which I think now has become larger than life. Police and Firebase. That relationship, I feel like it got soured. I don't know if it was that day that soured it.
Actually, it's interesting, Flavia, that police and Firebase, or police and me, never had any conflicts. Even back in the days when I was a violent young man. Even in the days when I would publicly smoke weed. Even during the days when I was an outlaw, we never had conflicts so much. And as I started maturing, the police even worked with me closer. As you probably remember, I was close to General Kaihura. Whenever they had problems in the ghetto, they would invite me to sort them down. You remember that when fellow artist Master Blaster was shot and killed, and there were riots in Kawempe. The police came for me. They asked me to go and calm them down. And I just needed to go to Kawempe and raise up a hand. And there was calm. When there was an outbreak of drug abuse, General Kaihura reached out to me. And we had a discussion. I encouraged police not just to arrest those young people because you can't understand the circumstances that got them into drug abuse. So I spoke to them. We were closer It is ironical, therefore, that now, when I am more mature, more law-abiding,
is when you have problems.
That's when I'm having problems with the police.
Interesting. What's your third song choice?
My third song choice will be Born in Africa from Philly Lutaya.
Of course.